Morning, everyone. Trying to do a follow-up video. When I first started with PwC, I did an interview on how I got hired, and now I wanted to do a follow-up interview like what I've been doing the past couple of years. And actually, I was gonna do a video at the 1 year mark, like my first year with the firm, but I decided not to, only because I think the first year you're still trying to figure things out, get your feet under you. Especially if you came from a non like Big Four background like I did. Um, so then I was like, well, I'll wait till the 18-month mark, and then the 18-month mark like came and passed, and the 2 year mark came, and I was like, I should really stop putting this off. So it's actually been about 2.5 years actually. Um, so I'll kind of just jump right in. I'll give a little backstory first. So I was hired at PwC about 2.5 years ago. And I'm currently in their like risk assurance practice. Now they're one cyber practice. They kind of merged some of their practices and did a little shuffling around for the good, I think. Um, and I came from actually government contracting, civil service, military background. So it was kind of a different background than you would traditionally see. I think at a Big Four. So I'm based in the SoCal market, and I do kind of almost all things like cyber. Um, a couple caveats I will say is our cyber San Diego practice isn't big, so I spend a ton of time on the road. Like my first year with the firm was probably 40 weeks. Last year was probably 24-ish weeks on the road, and so far this year, my third year, probably maybe six so far, and I'm probably like 4 months into it. So it's probably going to be a little bit of a slower year, but most of my clients, luckily this year, oddly have been on the East Coast, but don't require me to travel. So which is kind of odd. Um, but being based out of San Diego, a lot of the folks travel. My one other colleague that I have in San Diego that I work with, he spends a lot of time in LA, and some time outside of like Phoenix, like Denver, stuff like that. So we do, I think, spend a fair amount of time on the road, but I think that's just our market. I wouldn't say that's in most cases. My colleagues in LA probably spend a majority of their time in LA because there's a big market in LA. So I got hired cold. I just applied online and they called me back. What else should I caveat with? Oh, I should probably caveat that I like I mentioned before, I'm not a traditional Big Four guy. I came from government, so everything I say, that's my frame of reference. Um, so it's more of, I guess you could say, a 9 to 5 pace. Even though I'm not like I wasn't a 9 to 5 guy. I don't think like I would check my email on weekends, nights, get things ready, do a lot of things, volunteer for a lot of stuff, spend a lot of time on the road, just because that was me, and that's kind of the way I've was raised, brought up, what have you. Um, Anyway, so I kind of divided it into like three areas, like the bad and the good, and kind of the both in between. And I'm half tempted to go into like what I would consider the bad first, but maybe I'll go into the good first. And kind of the both first. So I have like notes here on a pad and notes on like Evernote, so I don't want to like forget anything. And because I've been thinking about doing this for so long, I want to make sure like I'm kind of methodical in what I put out. But and they're these good and bad, and both are not in any particular order, because it would be perceptual based, and this is still kind of what I think. Um, so the first good one I have is like exposure to markets. Like since I've been with the firm, almost everything I do and I've worked on engagements I've supported clients have all been different. Like I'll go from a NIST assessment to an ISO assessment to some sort of gap assessment because they bought like a new tool and they're trying to implement it to their organization. So almost everything I do is completely different, which makes it hard because it makes it hard because you have to like learn, unlearn, relearn at a very fast pace. Like the engagement I'm on now, I'll try to tell like stories as I go because I think it helps relevant. I was closing up an engagement, and I found out I was on this engagement last minute because of a shift in resources. So here I am on like a Tuesday, Wednesday, find out I'm on engagement starting the next week. And my current engagement, I have to like do the wrap up reports, do the historicals, do the final budget and billing. Like I have all this stuff to do. And then the next week I have like kickoff deck to make, financial plan to kind of put in place, project schedule, project plan, send out introductory emails, schedule some meetings. So all this, happens pretty quickly. And when you're exposed to different markets, financial and cyber and media, and technology and social, like social media, it can really make things interesting, can really, really tax a lot of resources. And by the way, just a little preview, this one's a good and a bad. Just because you have to pick up things and put things down like rather quickly, and that can sometimes tax your brain. But I do like it because everything you do is different. And most engagements I've worked on, maybe 3 or 4 have been like under a month, like short 2-3 weeks. But a lot of mine have been, in that 6 to 10 week mark, which I think is good because it allows you to find your pace a little bit better. Because in like a 2 or 3 week engagement, I mean, it's get in, report, get out, and it can be stressful at times. So I do like that aspect that you're going to spend a lot of time traveling around a lot of places that aren't that could be different. Next one I got is like tools and techniques. I get that's like a PMP thing, but there's a lot of like accelerators and things we have inside the firm that can make things like a lot easier. Granted, you have to like learn those really quickly, do those things really quickly, in most cases, but it does help. So while at times you're starting with a new client from scratch, usually you have some sort of document, Excel spreadsheet, some database stuff that you can kind of plug and play that help at least some portion of. So I do like that. It's not like you're creating things cold, which can be a huge pain. The next one I have is like decent training when you have time. I say that because we have a lot of online training. My friend's at another firm and he says, theirs is a little bit better, but from what I came from, I think they have a lot going on and a lot of diverse tools and things that you may need. And I caveat that with when you have time because you do spend a lot of time at work and I use a lot of the trainings that I have to like update my CISSP and other CPEs I need for some certifications I have, which makes it nice. And then internal to the firm, we have to do I think 40 hours a year for CPEs just for your time at the firm. And you get those a lot from online trainings. Also, we have usually every couple of weeks they'll have some training online, through the firm of a tool that came out or something we're rolling out or changing that count as well. But it is very like numbers driven, CPE driven, so you got to get those in. But I like it. We have a lot of stuff online. I haven't been in there in about 3 or 4 months just because I haven't had time. But it's coming up on my yearly, and you have to get in there, and I'll have to probably do some training before I close out like my 3rd year here. Next one I have is travel. I spend a lot of time on the road. It seems like a fair amount of my colleagues spend a lot of time on the road. Not so much in the for my friends in LA, but some of those folks do travel. I met a guy on one of my engagements that flew from like Seattle to Minnesota like every week for like 15 months. My worst was 21 weeks in a row, 22 weeks in a row from San Diego, Seattle. And mine was like Sunday to Friday because it was a client need, so that was kind of painful. But if you do like to travel, there's definitely some benefits to that. Especially if you're single or your family doesn't matter. My better half cares, but she's okay with it. So that can be good. International. Have I done any international trips? I've done one international trip since I've been here. Let me think of any close folks that I know. they've done one or two international trips. There's some folks that I talk to regularly that I actually started with the firm. I think they've each done one or two. But it just all depends. I have a friend of mine that's in Houston, and he travels to I think Sweden every like 6 weeks for a week. And then he tries to bring his family over, and they try to see a different portion of Europe while he's there. But nothing that I know. That's it. But if at least in the U.S., like I've been to Phoenix, Vegas, Houston, Dallas, Austin, El Paso, L.A. of course, San Francisco, Seattle, Sacramento, Minnesota, Denver for like 2 days. Nothing in New York. Atlanta once or twice. DC 2-3 times. Trying to think. Did I miss any? Trying to think if I missed any. I think that's it. And Florida, which is obviously where I'm currently at. So like travel could be good. And the next one I have is like meeting good people with different backgrounds. Definitely, I think of the big four, we have the most diverse workforce. However you want to define that, but we have a lot of people from like diverse backgrounds. One engagement I was on, we had an accountant. He had an undergrad in accounting, but an MS in computer science. Super sharp guy. But you never know who you're going to meet in backgrounds. And I find that like a big plus because you can see how other people are relating to work and how they like do their stuff and how they may look at things different than you. So I think that can be like a huge benefit. What else? Those are all the good ones I had. What else can I think of? Oh, it's like things like about the firm that I like. Not so much about the work. They did pay for some, like my CISA when I got that. They do a pretty good job of like paying for training. I think they might be a little low compared to other big four firms, but I'm not like out there comparing. But I've had one tuition reimbursement turned away. And it was only for $400 or $500 to take a test. I wasn't so worried about it. But I've never had any issues. They paid for some of my school for a couple classes I was taking. I think that's about it. So some of the like both that can fall into like good or bad. Like travel can be good or bad. Corporate culture could be good or bad, whether it drives with you or not. I'll kind of get into it, but they follow more of like the Kravitz system, which was like a system developed I think in the late 1800s by like law firms, or one law firm in particular. I think it was like the Kravitz and so law firm. But it's like all about how like you kind of start at the bottom and you kind of work your way up, and it's kind of like an up or out kind of model. Like you either keep growing, building with a firm, bringing in resources, whether that be money and people and things like that, or you're kind of out, which is, I don't know if you remember like the GE days. Some of the older folks like me probably do. In the 80s, Jack Welch used to have where he'd drop like the bottom 3% from his organization like every year, like those lower performers. I mean, it's kind of like a deep thing to go into, at least as far as my take on it. I'm not sure it's the best way, because I think if you have to like let employee go, in majority of cases, at least my personal opinion is, it's probably not the employee's fault. And I tread lightly with that, but I firmly believe that in probably a majority of cases, it's probably not the employee's fault. There's probably like ongoing circumstances that caused it. Like I could give you stories, but I don't know that's necessary. But it's kind of like the Kravitz system. If you want to look it up, there's plenty of research on it, and it's like an up or out system. Kind of another thing that's kind of a good or a bad at least in my opinion, I got an email coming in, or the email came in, is they follow, at least in my opinion, this thing called like the Peter Principle, and that they base your promotions based upon like the level you're at and a little bit about the next level. And I'm not sure like that's the best way, because then you're promoted to failure, which is it's good and bad, but I'm not sure that that's the best way. The Peter Principle is something that I think was developed in the early 70s, maybe 60s. I can't remember. But it's based upon performance in your current role, not like performance in the next role. And the guy who created it studied like an organization who promoted that way. Like if you're good at engineering, you should be good at senior engineering or whatever, the engineering 3 or 2 or whatever the kind of the setup is. And then within like the same organization or a like organization, they promoted people at random. And actually the random promotes actually did like 14% better than them by whatever measurement technique. I can't remember the details of the study. And they did that because the people who were promoted at random would have to get out and like shake hands and meet people and talk through things, and you'd have to share this like cultural knowledge to like get ahead. And because they kind of had a lens of, oh, I don't know this job, like I got to get out, and it forced everyone to kind of work together. Which in consulting, which when I get into the not so great things is could be kind of an issue. But yeah, I think that covers like the both. Like there's always going to be with anything like good and bad from both sides. I don't mind being here. I like the work. It's a little stressful at times. I don't know that it's the perfect fit for me, but I like it. I like being here. I plan on staying here a little bit. And I'll go into like what I consider like the not so great things. I mentioned a little bit about like the Peter Principle and a little bit about the Cravath system. I do think it's a little bit managed like the 80s and 90s when there were boom years. And it's definitely you're either like an up or out kind of thing. As far as staying with the firm. I think my biggest concern is like a lack of empathy. And I say that I think it's within the culture. Like I get emails all the time from, partners, principals, what have you, managing directors. And they'll email me and be like, hey, I see that you have time open on your schedule, because everyone has access to everyone's schedule. I need this done by like tomorrow. And as I'm reading the email and see what he wants, I'm like I've never done that before. So you pull time off his schedule that day, and usually they're super busy, and you try to find 15 minutes, and you're like, hey, just wanted to, talk about this ask that you're talking about, and, you talk through it, and you're like, hey, I'm not really a good fit, like, I've never done this. He's like, yeah, but you're the only one available. I'm sure you'll figure it out. Like, believe it or not, like, that happens a fair amount. Not in that so much direct case, but when I'm on engagements, sometimes like I have to like figure it out because either I've never done it before, or some sort of time along the way the client has brought up some stuff that like that we need to like look at or do, and that could be like a very, very bad thing, especially if you're on like a 2 or 3 week engagement and you have to figure this stuff out. And I say the empathy part of it because they don't care. They want the work to get done, right? Get in the project, get the project done, find more work with the customer, move on. And a lot of times, even if you're honest with yourself and honest with them that you've never done it, like they just don't want to hear it. They want the work done. They don't care. And I think that also leads into a little bit of disconnect and disjointedness with like you feeling like you're a number and not so much a person. So like as far as like a psychological fit, the culture can be quite brash at times, I think. And coming from a military guy of 22 years, I've been around, brash for sure, 100%. So that could be kind of trying on people for sure. I can definitely see that. And that leads into like another one is it's very numbers driven. So like everything you do is kind of, I don't want to say monitored, but is like looked at in such a way. Like if they pay for your cell phone, they pay for your college, like it's all goes into like a master system that like spits out numbers, and that goes from like your efficiency and your time off, certifications that you had, things that you did along the way. Like almost everything is attached to a number. And what I worry about is that only encompasses one thing, like a number. It doesn't encompass like, what you do along the way, the connections you've made, the, people you've reached out to, the stuff you've done outside of work. Like it doesn't really encompass everything. It encompasses like a number, something that's measurable, but not everything is like measurable. And it's really hard to track down things to a number. It's easy to relate things to a number and measure them for like some research, but it's hard to like come up with a number for a person. I think that's a little gray area. But I can see why they do it, when you have, 50, 60, 70,000 employees, like that's the way it works. But that can be, it makes it hard to quantify when you're going up for a promotion and you want to say, hey, but this other stuff. And they're like, hey, where's the result? And you're like, oh. I think a lot of people in the firm are and I think it's a cultural thing, or like worried about themselves. Like I'll reach out to people and ask questions, see if they know something, see if they know who to talk to. And I would say a majority of the time I get crickets. Like it's just, there's 3 or 4 people that I continually go to that are big connectors. But if you know anything about power, right, the way you get power is to give power, you give it away. Like, oh, I know him. He super helped me out with this. You got to talk to Bill. Like Bill's the go-to for this. He'll help you out. And then you call Bill and Bill totally helps you out and goes the distance. 2 or 3 days later, follows up, make sure you have XYZ. Like very few people do that. I could probably count maybe 5 that I've worked with, in 2.5 years that will do this. Most of the time, they're either not going to respond or they're going to say, I don't have it. And I'm like, but you're the guy. Like 3 or 4 people have told me you're the person. Which can make things painful. And I think that's just because, right, the culture is kind of like up or out. So I think that kind of plays into that. And I'm not so much with everyone. Keep in mind, this is just based upon my experience. But, my coach, he's a super cool guy, good guy. Even him, and I talk to him once a week, sometimes he can be, hard to get a hold of. But it definitely leans to, make things difficult when you're trying to get things done in your network to reach out and help people, because it's very numbers driven. You're either delivering results, delivering value, or it's kind of like you're taking away value. So that can be kind of problematic. What else did I have here? Yeah, it's like I said, worried about like competition instead of worried about yourself. So I think that kind of plays into it. I think we discussed that. Responsibility. It seems to flow a lot down and not so much up. And this could be a perceptual thing. Like one time, actually recently, I was like 4 minutes late dialing into a meeting because I was coming from another meeting that ran over. Funny thing is in the meeting invite, because I set up the meeting, I said, I think my meeting is going to run over. I think I could be up to as much as 10 minutes late. But I'll make sure I'll ping you, send you a little message. When my meeting's ending, so if your meeting's running over, you have places you got to be, you got to do, you got to make a quick call. We can kind of schedule it. So I send him a note, hey, I'm dialing in right now. My meeting ran over. So I dial in and I get we really need to level set some things. And I'm like, okay. So I let him talk, do his thing, and I was like, well, just let me know what works best for you so that I can convey to you that if I'm coming from one meeting and coming to this meeting, then I might be running late. I was like, I put that in the meeting notes. I'm just, if there's a better way other than the first line, let me know. And you could hear him click and open up the meeting invite, and he goes, oh, I didn't read that far. I'm like, But if that was me, like we'd have like a serious problem. So I think accountability in the firm works a lot like down from senior staff to lower staff. I don't know that it works up though. I've had maybe one or two instances, and many instances, where the person senior to me during the meeting was like, well, yeah, man, I really messed this one up. Let me see what I can do. I got to fix this. Very rare have I seen like that happen, especially if they like show up for a meeting that they're supposed to be at, that you need them to make some decisions. Like very rarely are they going to be like, oh, totally sorry. Which I think is a big problem. Like accountability works up and it works down. Like that's the way it works. You know, you don't have a kid and be like, kid's a bad kid. You turn in the kid. Like you can't. That's not the way it works. And I find that the couple people that I mentioned that have done this are like very, very level-headed guys, and are like, oh, and they come from like really diverse backgrounds. I'm not saying there's anything related to them. But I think the firm does promote like, as you go, you like know everything, even though could be farther from the truth. Because if everyone knew everything, well, we'd probably be in a different spot. So I think that's one of the big issues like I have. I mean, I make my fair amount of mistakes. I'm the first one to admit that I make these mistakes. And I'm usually the first one to go to whoever I'm working with, my team or the folks that work above me, and go, hey, I made this mistake. Just fixed it. Just want to let you know. I'll take my bashing and we'll move on. What else do I have here? I think we talked about that. The firm kind of forces you to, like, the more you give, the more they take, right? That's naturally. But I'm not so sure, like, that's good, right? Because you obviously, people need time for themselves. People need time to, their well-being. And definitely, like, as you promote, they're going to want more. I think that's just natural. But I don't know that that's going to be good for everyone. I think, like, I'm 41. I think if it was my, like, 20-year-old self or 25-year-old self, like, I had no problems, giving more than I'm getting. But now that as I get older, like, there's got to be some kind of, like, balance of value. Like, I don't mind giving if I'm going to get some additional value, or at least long term. I struggle with this one a lot. Like, I don't know that, at least for me, I don't know. It could go either way, whether, I find that it's there or not. But like I said, I still enjoy being here. I enjoy, like, a lot of the folks I work with. I don't enjoy all the projects I'm on, but a majority. I like them in majority. I think I talked about the numbers, very numbers-driven organization. As far as, like, utilization for time that you work, money that you bring in, contracts that you can finish, or engagements that you can finish early. It's most of the stuff's based on like a 2,000-hour man year. So, they want you to do more work. Like, I spend a lot of time traveling. So luckily I have like a couple 100 hours a year that is excess travel. So that it doesn't count towards utilization, but it kind of helps. Hey, he spent a lot of time on the road. Which doesn't help me, like, grow my market, which is like San Diego. Makes it kind of hard. But one thing about numbers is, like, they don't come back to help you, right? People help people. Numbers don't help people. Anything else on my notes? Like, I made notes on this thing too. I think we're good. But anyway, I think I answered a lot of the questions that people had. I got a lot of, I use that term loosely, probably 10 or 20 people that messaged me on my old video that had some questions. Number one, how do I like it so far? I'm looking at getting in. What are your thoughts? Just sent me messages through like YouTube via email. I think that's how it comes. And I wanted to try to address those questions. But like I said, I'm coming up on, like, being here 3 years. And I wanted to make it 1 year. Just couldn't do it. I think it would have been unfair because I probably would have had more questions than answers. So yeah, I think we're at a good spot. But like I said, this is totally based upon my, like, perception, my biases, But yeah, I think a majority of people will agree with, what I say. If you guys have any questions, feel free to reach out. Like I said, I enjoyed it. It's definitely trying at times. It can be difficult at times. It may not suit like everyone, but I think everyone in their mid-20s, maybe after undergrad or grad school, should definitely, sync up with a Big Four or a consulting firm, and it can really, help you with time management. Can help you with like balancing things, like balancing tasks, which one's the most important. Do some things that are maybe not comfortable for you. Like I'm horrible at Excel, and this current project I'm on, I've had to really dig in Excel, and one day I'll do a VLOOKUP, which I don't do that often, and the next day I'll be like, man, how did I do that? So I have to like make myself like cheat sheets all the time. In fact, I have like a cheat sheet now, like the past 4 or 5 engagements I've been on, just of like things I've done and I've had to look up, or people I've had to call to kind of help me back. Especially if I go to that client again, it's kind of funny. But yeah. If you guys have any questions, I appreciate it. Thank you guys for listening. Hopefully you find it valuable. I think my last video has a couple thousand hits, a couple thousand views, so I definitely hope it's valuable. Anyway, thank you guys so much. If you have any questions, let me know. Have a good day.